Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. This is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how they've grown with the character and franchise over time. We've reached the end of season 2. It's the end of 2023. And I just wanted to take a look back on the wonderful conversations that I had with so many phenomenal human beings, recollecting on how we've all grown with the character Godzilla and the franchise as a whole. And I hope that you enjoy this recap. And I hope that you're looking forward to season 3, which is coming in February.
That kind of shaped me in that, like, you know what? It's not all from my point of view. Like, the world, like, my perception of the world is not somebody else's. And that's, like, just the reality. And I have to understand that with every interaction I go into. And, like, try to carry that as best I can. Like, when I debate, when I meet people for the first time, or just have conversation, and I just gotta, like, I would say that's what it is, just exposure to so many different walks of life that I would not have gotten otherwise.
Wow, that's really powerful. And something too that I can connect with. I guess one thing that a lot of, and this has been the case with many of the people I've spoken with here on the show, is that one thing that I think a lot of Godzilla fans universally share is that we've all felt like very isolated or othered in some way.
Yeah.
And like being able to connect with the rest of the fandom like has helped us heal those aspects of ourselves in many ways. Now, mind you, this could be the case for like, you know, any fandom probably, right? But I feel like for a lot of kids especially, like we didn't have a lot of friends in our periphery who also loved Godzilla the way we do, right?
Yeah.
And part of our journey was probably making peace with that for a long time. But now that we're able to like reach out and connect with people and see just how like diverse our fandom is and how each of us have been uniquely impacted by the character and franchise, like that is really empowering in of itself, right?
That's only the beginning. I mean, I wasn't too crazy about Godzilla back then because I wasn't getting into Godzilla yet. I mean, but then as years pass, I'm starting to like getting into more Godzilla because whenever time Godzilla films appeared on cable television, as I flipped the channels. Yeah, I didn't know there were more Godzilla films, so thanks to cable television, I'm starting getting into Godzilla more.
Well, and here's another thing too. Like he's clearly shaped what you do as a creative outlet, also, right? Because you would not have been motivated to create your YouTube channel. You would not have been motivated to have a podcast, right? Had it not been for your love of the character, you know, encouraging you to do that.
That's just the thing about Godzilla. He is that reflection on human nature, just to a degree, because, you know, if you think about it, he's an outcast. He's an outcast of some nature, and kind of like him, like me, that's how I was growing up. I was an outcast in so many ways. You know, I was outcast. When I say to my family, I mean in terms of I didn't like the things that they liked, you know, as far as my brothers loving sports and this, that, and everything, or my mom liked and everything. But I just felt like that I was that kind of thing. And for Godzilla, I was relatable with him because he made me feel like, yes, he is an outcast, but he still perseveres through whatever comes near him, you know, and he continues on being this particular, you know, impression of what it means to be, you know, hey, you can't let whatever stop you from doing what you're doing and being who you are, you know, be real with yourself, you know. I've said this before, you know, Godzilla, you know, is a father figure because I didn't have that too. I didn't have a father in my life growing up, you know, and Godzilla was a father figure, but I realized he was more than just that. He was somebody who, like I say, yeah, he could be big down, he could get blown up, he could get all these things. The thing is, you get back up.
If people can resonate with someone with a kaiju like that and understand that it doesn't matter how tall, it doesn't matter how big, skinny, large, whatever you are, you can absolutely fight your obstacles. And just the same thing that you said, I might come out unscathed, I might come out broken and bruised, but that doesn't matter because I still stood my ground.
Like, there's just always something other. Like he's always othered in some way. Like, humanity is always misinterpreting him.
That's right.
And of course, like I think of Shin Godzilla in this instance, right? Like, this creature is literally just trying to exist and survive in some fashion, probably with no malicious intent. It's just this mutated, in pain, jangling batch of bones and skin. Like, when we go through what we go through, like, mental health wise, physically, like, how often have we felt that way ourselves? So, like, I feel like, metaphorically speaking, these characters like Shin Godzilla, Godzilla Jr., like, they symbolize, like, not only like how othered we feel, but how in our otherness we're able to resist and survive in some way.
I think, which is very, very relatable to a lot of us. 1984 English dub. The professor says about Godzilla, he's just trying to find his home. And I think, how many of us in this life are literally just looking for a place that feels like home to us, outside of our home, of course, but home that we feel so accepted by and so loved and welcomed by. Like, how could you not relate to that? I constantly feel it on a daily basis sometimes. I'm just like, I gotta find my home.
If I were to go back in time and impart wisdom upon my younger self, I would say, I would let myself know that life is gonna get really hard and you're gonna get the crap beaten out of you from time to time, and it's gonna feel like you're never gonna get back up, but you can always get back up. You know, sometimes you'll need help, either from a friend or a therapist or whatever. And eventually you're going to find the strength to get back up, because how many times has Godzilla gotten the crap beat out of him and he got back up? Like, yeah, he had help most of the time, but that doesn't make him weak. And as a matter of fact, every time he was down and he got the help he needed, he got back up stronger than before. So if you're down and you need some help, let people help you. That help is always available. You just need to accept it.
If we look at people's histories with Godzilla, how they've been influenced, how they've, grown as a result of being exposed to the character and franchise, like, we see so many diverse experiences. Like, as a gay male, like, Godzilla, like I've mentioned in prior episodes, taught me how to overcome and literally show up to school despite adversity that I would face. Watching Godzilla go through the adversity he faced helped me endure my own and survive, right? So, like, for those people whose first reaction is to say, like, well, Godzilla stomps everyone, keep this commentary out of Godzilla, I would say, but it is significant to some people. Like, it is significant for some people, and we should allow spaces for those conversations to take place. If those conversations don't impact you, that's totally okay, right? Like, right. You don't need to relate to Godzilla in the same way that you or I relate to Godzilla, right?
Maybe one of the reasons why he endures and why people like you and me connect with him so much is he doesn't talk. He's clearly not an animal. For about 75% of his incarnations, he's not an animal. But because he's this mystical, primal force, we can pour ourselves into him and be accepted by him. And, he sits, I wouldn't say he sits as a god above us, above judgment, but people like you and me, we identify with him. We pour ourselves into him. He's almost like this celestial mirror that we can look into.
We've mentioned Akira Takarada in the show over the past couple of seasons so far, but I don't think we've really just had like a moment to like just take a deep dive on just how huge of a hero he has been and continues to be for many of us. I got to meet him, I think it was the 2019 G-Fest, and he was just so down to earth, so welcoming. He will look you like right in the eyes and just like have a conversation with you and just make you feel like you belong in that space with him, right?
I also met him at 2019, and I decided to wear a suit and tie when I met him, just because he always wore those at fan greetings. And he, I had met him previously at G-Fest 2012 when I was like 13, almost 14. And the first time I met him, I got a Shikishi board that said friendship on it. He basically wrote friendship on the Shikishi board, and that spoke to me because that was the convention where I first came out to G-Fest, where I first started meeting my friends that I have cultivated from these Facebook groups online. That was the first time we were all together. So for him to write Shikishi or friendship on the Shikishi board right at the end of that convention was like, how did he know? And then when I met him in 2019, Maki and Tetsuya, his son and his wife, were with him, and I got another one done. And this one said Hisho, which means leap. And then he told Maki what he was trying to say to me, and they basically were like, Akira wants to say that you're a young man, and your era is just beginning, just like the Reiwa era of Japan had just begun. So he wanted me to leap forward into my new era as a young man, kind of finding his way in the world. And that like made me cry. Like I was like, oh my God.
I would say like it has made me over time like less reluctant to make decisions and like following my gut in terms of basically making decisions in my life. I've also like learned to remain humble about certain things. I think like the most I could say is that it's made me feel like stronger about myself and about being sure of my decisions, because I usually hesitate a lot and miss opportunities. And these past few years I've made a lot more like bolder decisions and seeing where they go, and then not being afraid of what comes next.
Absolutely. That's a very unique answer too, because there is a certain boldness to Godzilla that I don't think we really talk about a lot. Like I know like for me, like Godzilla's boldness taught me the importance of like standing up for myself and surviving like against adversity that I might experience. But like when it comes to like decision making and thinking of one's like capabilities and perseverance, like that's really interesting.
He advances instead of retreats.
Exactly. One person was like, Donny, you're in your mid-30s and you still love Godzilla, like when are you growing out of it? And I'm just like, excuse me, like I'm not like, who said that I had to grow out of anything? Who says that any of us have to grow out of the things that we love?
Absolutely.
Right?
I wouldn't be making friends with like a handful of people I've started to be friends with online if it wasn't for Godzilla. So it's building actual relationships with people, sharing a passion with something.
The longer I watch his movies, especially like the Heisei era, the more I feel like he's a character that people don't always fully understand, that he's a very traumatized character. Because let's go back to the very first Godzilla movie from 1954. What is the first thing he does? He sinks a fishing boat, right?
Mm-hmm.
That fishing boat, that's how the movie opens.
Yeah.
Well, when you think of the character and you look back in time, he was created by the Bikini Atoll bomb test, right?
Yeah.
So imagine, he was under the water. Well, what does he see when he looks up? As this pain is happening, he sees the boats floating around, right?
Yeah.
So he sees a boat and he just goes right back to that trauma. And so, of course, he's going to make it go away. And so, like, you know, I've just come to understand that he's a very traumatized character.
I don't think we do that enough, right? Like we frequently see Godzilla films, but Godzilla is usually the aggressor, or it's so far removed from Godzilla's point of view that we can't literally think about what the experience is like from Godzilla's perspective, right?
It's just the determination and just not stopping. Like I consider myself a very what's the word? It's a persistent person. I do have down times, and I do have points where I give up or I quit or I stop, but I come back. And I feel like for me, watching Godzilla, that's always been his thing. He's always gone into battles and then he gets his butt kicked at first. Like he's always like, sometimes he doesn't know what he's going up against or whatever. And then he gets his butt kicked and he takes a little bit of a power nap, but then he comes right back stronger than what he was before. And then he's able to take over. He's able to, conquer the whatever conflict it is. And so I feel like that's always been something that was ingrained to me as a kid, that no matter how hard something is, you'll get knocked down, you will fail. But the biggest thing is to get back up and to keep on going. Don't stay down, get back up no matter how much it hurts, and just keep on going forward. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned in the last 10 years of doing this stuff. And I'll continue to do so. I will continue to have failures. I know that is the thing that every artist and every creative person needs to understand, is you will fail 100%. And it's going to happen multiple times. Even when you feel like you're in a successful phase of your life, you're still going to have failures. But the important thing is you get back up and you keep on moving forward. That's been the biggest thing. So Godzilla for me is sort of that embodiment of Godzilla gets the crap beat out of him sometimes, but he doesn't stop. He'll get right back up and he'll throw it right back, and then he'll win.
It was really hard because, as somebody with ADHD, a lot of people with ADHD have a fear of rejection. And so, but I also like sharing things with people. So it's like, I wanted to share Godzilla and this weird goofy genre with other people. And at the time, it was not popular and it did not have any real mainstream presence. So you're in a weird position because, and so when people reject it, it feels like a personal rejection. This guy, and I was in high school, God, it took me too long. This guy was trying to get my goat about Godzilla. And I was just like, whatever, man. I'm just yeah, sure, fine. And it just didn't, he was already a dick and I didn't like him, but it just doesn't matter. Like, who cares? Yeah. They're not going to take it away from you.
I used to get bullied a lot for liking Mothra, and I've talked to you about this many times. Especially in high school, people would be like, "Oh, it's how queer of you to like a giant, beautiful moth thing," and of course, at the time, I think it's because I felt like such an emotional investment in this creature. It kind of felt like an extension of myself, right? And I think that's probably how in a way you felt too when you had people bullying and harassing you for being a Godzilla fan. But if there's anything interesting that I want to illustrate from what we just discussed, over the course of 2 seasons of this show so far, one big thing that Godzilla fans bond over is how isolated they were at one point in time.
Yeah. And
the truth is, I think that we spend our youths wanting to have a group of people to celebrate the things that we love with us. But we don't realize that as we grow, we will find those spaces and those groups, right?
I like the nature of Godzilla. Godzilla is dual natured, because Godzilla is kind of like Kali to me, in that it's the nature to create and destroy. Godzilla saves the day sometimes. That they see Godzilla as either benevolent or destructive, and so it's that people are afraid of Godzilla sometimes, but they're also there have been films in which Godzilla is like this benevolent protector that saves it from a greater evil. I have this nature of Godzilla that to be more like Godzilla, I will let the beast out in myself when there is a great evil out there, or when I perceive something as being negative or something that needs to, I don't know, be put in its place, I will let out my inner Godzilla. And it reminds me that I need to release the beast sometimes and show my fiery insides, just like Godzilla.
During my Godzilla fanfiction writing stint, one of my favorite things that's extremely cringeworthy is I decided to begin putting together like movie posters for my fanfics, or you could say just photo manipulation. So I went through this phase where I was like, my friends and I would like pose for photo manipulations and be in like these photo manipulations. I would make like movie trailers, like where my friends and I would act out and do all sorts of things. It was wild. It was wild. Very cringe, but I look back on those days and I'm just like, you know what? They were good memories. They were really good memories. And looking back on all of that now, as a Godzilla fan, it's made me more appreciative and grateful of this community, especially because had it not been for this community, like even though I had dealt with a lot of bullying from the community has grown so much over the years, not only in size but also acceptance. And without very nurturing people in my life who would encourage my writing and encourage my expression as a Godzilla fan, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I would not be an educator. I would not have a writing career. And it means a lot to me that there were people early on in the Godzilla fandom who believed in me and who were able to kind of help me hone that sense of direction.
I spent most of my time as a kid in my room or at school, and at school was not a lot of fun. I sat in my room, watched my Godzilla movies on my VHS player, and like played with my toys. That was my life day to day. And I went to school and I was like, oh my God, guys, Godzilla's so cool. And I was told, well, Godzilla's not real. You're an idiot. That never really left. I mean, up until high school, like that was still something that consistently like people would say. When your home life is that every day, 365 days out of a year, and you go to school, and the one thing that keeps you from like losing it is being made fun of, and you're kind of put down for liking it. It becomes a fight. Godzilla's been my best friend since I was 5 years old, because he's been the only thing there that's not like taken advantage of me.
It wasn't until I graduated college and I moved to New York City. Actually, I was still in North Jersey, but I started to go into New York City. Now, interestingly enough, Donny, this is about the time that I was coming out or starting to make the realization of who I was and to be my true authentic self. And I sort of tie that in with my rediscovering of Godzilla. Fast forward to 2014, when I started, right before that, I started to join a lot of the Facebook groups, the collecting group. I have met so many amazing people that I can call my close friends, and I am kind of blown away, as they are. We've talked about this a couple times, that number one, a giant radioactive dinosaur from Japan brought us all together, and we have so much in common on other levels. Like when people come over, Donny, like we don't spend hours and hours talking about Godzilla. We have so much other things in common, and we're friends. It transcends that. And I think that's amazing, because the spark or the catalyst that brought us together were the Godzilla movies.
My mind's kind of going to Final Wars.
Ooh,
And,
I like this direction.
Like, there's that scene at the very end that I think is really cheesy, but I really like it, where it's like they have the baby Godzillas and the kid, and he's like, no, like we have to live in peace, and then like Godzilla, little Godzilla, they like walk off into the sunset in the ocean.
It's such a good ending.
And I feel like that says a lot about like conflict and choosing your battles.
Ooh, I like that.
So that's something that I would probably impart to my younger self, because being an emotional sponge and having the childhood that I had, and going back and being like, you know, hey, you don't have to internalize everything. Like, you can pick your battles.
Godzilla's been by my side since I was a kid. He's helped me through many, many situations. And through my transition, it wasn't anything different. Every time I was going to have surgery or a consultation or something, like, I'd always have my Godzilla movies with me. I've been carrying the same Anguirus, my first. Somebody gave this to me at a convention, and I've been carrying him around with me for like the last 10 years. So through all of my surgeries and my transition journey, like, he was right beside me. Godzilla was there, and it made me appreciate all the lessons throughout the years that these films have taught me. You know, whether it was Son of Godzilla, and he's teaching his son to, you know, grow up and be an adult, even through like Final Wars or any of the other films where Godzilla's being a dad or a mom. They all have teaching lessons, and it's what you take from those lessons is what helped me get through each situation as it arose.
If anybody wants to understand my current mental state, just go watch the movie, because it's basically all my feelings right now that I can't really speak about. After, you know, Godzilla's roaring at the mushroom cloud, and then he just walks away, and then I'm going to get emotional, but because this is where I am in my life right now, is when you see the rain falling and you see him just crumbled on the ground and he just starts screaming, and Godzilla just walks away completely indifferent, doesn't care. That's where I am right now in my life. And that was hard to watch because I felt it, and I feel like that was kind of a moment of release for me in the theater.
Yeah.
You know, where things were like, it's just like, oh my god, dude, I hear you, can you hear me? And it's like, no, he can't hear you, he's in a movie. But like, it felt like being heard in a way. It's like he was screaming my scream that I can't scream. I'm telling people, even if you've never seen Godzilla, go see Godzilla -1, because it's just a really good story. And you know, and it's about survival and trauma, and if you're a trauma survivor, if you're going through trauma, it's actually really cathartic. And I think a lot of people need that release.